Hey guys, what's up? It is week 424, 423, not 100% sure. But before we start, I want to give a RIP to Maddie Deering. She was an independent filmmaker, made Spirit Animal and Bathtub Shark Attack. I had met her at Wasteland. She was really good friends with one of my close friends, so we became friends. I only got to hang out with her a few times, but every encounter was great. She was super lovely, incredibly funny, intelligent, just made wacky, crazy movies, loved sharks, just an overall one-of-a-kind, cool person, and RIP. I didn't get a chance to go to the showing, but my heart goes out to everybody, your friends and family and everything like that. Lost somebody of, a great deal in the horror community, independent kind of world and everything like that. So RIP, Maddie. You will be missed. Let's hop into the reviews. The first one up is The Tale of Oiwa's Ghost from 1961 on this one. This is Radiance Films. And this is like the most famous Japanese ghost story ever. For me, at least. It was made hundreds of years ago, the original story, and it's a classic tale. It's been done 1 in 59 that Radiance put out in a box set. The Ghost of Soya. I can't remember the title of that one, but it was also, I think there was 2 versions of it in that year. But besides that, I've also saw Crest of Betrayal by Keiji Fukasaku from 94. I watched Summer of Evil for 1981, which is the same story. There's actually 2 from 1981. There's also an animated version of that film. Well, not Summer of Evil, but animated version of the story. And then there's this one. And I've grown kind of, familiar with the story, of course. It's kind of, I don't want to say convoluted because it's such a classic. It's like a Shakespearean ghost story about cheating and deceitfulness and, leaving your wife, the samurai, and everything like that, Lemon. But this was my favorite rendition. It's directed by Tai Kato, who directed a couple kind of Yakuza movies that I've covered on here. Radiance Films put them out. And it actually stars, let me see if I can, Tomisha Burrow, was it Wakayama, who is in a bunch of great films. He plays kind of a heavy in a lot of the Yakuza movies. He's just one of the most brilliant actors. I think he's actually the guy in Lone Wolf and Cub, if I'm not mistaken. But all his appearances in the Yakuza movies, he just demands screen time. He's intimidating, but also incredibly likable. And he's really crazy in this one as Lemon, one of the main characters here. So it's a period piece, of course, and we have this samurai who is basically shunned from his father-in-law from seeing his wife because he supposedly murdered and is a thief and robber and everything like that. And so he devises this plan with a friend or friendly guy to him to basically kill 2 birds and two people, 2 birds, 1 stone kind of deal, whatever it is. But so this double murder so they can get the father out of the way so he can get his wife back and they can get rid of the suitor for his wife's sister. So they basically can kind of keep this secret, kill these 2 people on the road and everything like that, pin the murders on each other, and kind of walk away and live happily ever after. But that's not exactly how it goes, because a rich young girl has her eye on Lemon after all this kind of stuff has happened and people have been murdered. And Lemon is somewhat tricked to a certain point, but he doesn't really go too hard against it. He kind of plays into it. And his wife is poisoned with a deadly poison. And there's other characters involved. It gets kind of crazy. I don't want to go into the depths of it if you know the story. But her face gets disfigured and she ends up on a untimely end. But she starts to haunt Lemon and he kind of loses his mind. But there's more to the story than that. There's a young kind of suitor of the sister who possibly is not dead. All that kind of stuff, mistaken identity. But what I really loved about this one was the cinematography is great. It's black and white, but the acting and the way the story unfolds and the characters, I think, is probably my favorite rendition of it. I think that there is the character that carries it out with Lemon is despicable at first, but overall he becomes almost likable. And one of my favorite lines in the film, I think definitely my favorite line, is a brilliant scene towards the end when there's this giant showdown and they all kind of show up to kind of try to dispatch Lemon. And he's this vicious, badass samurai who's lost his mind. He's kind of like isolated from everyone after he went ballistic from seeing these visions. And everybody says, I'm so-and-so, I'm here to kill you, I'm so-and-so. And the last guy says, well, they have this history together. And they committed all these horrible murders. This is the thing that started this all these lies. And he says, being so-and-so's sworn guardian, I also must fight you. And Lemon looks up and he says, how amusing. Like, he sees him and he catches the most ironic twist of fate at the end, that this guy, who is just as guilty as him, has almost changed his ways in this weird ironic twist of fate, that he's like, how amusing. It's just completely deadpan. I was like, that is a brilliant scene. That is a brilliant moment. And the end scene is gloriously shot. The cinematography's top notch, and it's a little different, because we have like, I would say, I don't want to necessarily say traditional cinematography, but at the end of the film, we go guerrilla. Like, and I mean by guerrilla, what do you mean they're a guerrilla? Going some Jesse the Body, but we kind of go guerrilla style, in a certain way. We go handheld in this old time where the camera's moving with the action, and I was like, oh, this is a little bit different for this time, a little bit kind of unique, and looking this like classy black and white ghost story, and then we're going to get a little chaotic towards the end during the fights, and I appreciated that. Love this movie. Great movie. Awesome rendition, good special effects, creepy hauntings, fast paced. I was immediately intrigued, and this is one of these stories that if you're watching, you're like, I understand exactly what's going on, but when you go to explain it, you're like, well, this guy and that. It's very complicated. It's not convoluted. It's not sloppy. It's just complicated. As far as the special features, we got a couple here. We have introduction by the interview, and an interview with Mary Asatu. And she talks about some of her favorite scenes in the film that have been recreated numerous times, and the other ones, of course, like that. And then we have visual essay by Lindsay Nelson. This is fun because we have about 5 or 6 of the different renditions, and maybe 4 or 5 of the renditions of this story, some of which ranging from the 50s all the way up until probably the early 2000s, where we have that kind of direct-to-video Japanese ghost story style stuff. There's clips from, the Ring in there as well, kind of showing how influential this story has been on Japanese ghost stories. And to be honest, let's face it, the Japanese ghost stories of the 50s and 60s are some of the all-time best ghost stories ever. And that's why it's so crazy, because I'm going through 82, of course. When we get to the early 80s, Japan's output has been mostly everything like Nakatsu erotic films and that bend into horror. We have some in the 70s, but when we get to the early 80s, most of it is Nakatsu erotic films, like Summer of Evil is there, or Island of Evil Spirits, is that what that one's called? So we do have these kind of, but most of them are either thrillers, psychedelic, weird, kind of crazy things by like Seijun Suzuki and stuff like that. But for the most part, we don't have very many horror movies from Japan until we hit, I guess, that direct-to-video V-cinema kind of style stuff where we start getting these really nasty, weird shit that I love, and the guinea pig movies and stuff like that. But this is a classy, great movie with an amazing cast, and it's an amazing story. Yeah, he is the guy from Lone Wolf and Cub, but he's in a handful of movies that they released as well. And I haven't only actually seen Shogun Assassin, which I love, but I need to watch the Lone Wolf and Cub movies. I have the Blu-ray. And, life is worth living. Life is worth sticking around when you still know you have the Lone Wolf and Cub movies to watch, and you still have tons of classic movies to watch. And I have a voracious appetite for film and cinema, as you guys know. I watch everything. So, I still have so many classics to see. So you can't see it all, but you damn well try. But I would really recommend The Tale of Awa's Ghost. That name is hard, but that's the character's name in the story as well. So I don't know. This one, it varies from the traditional story, but it's close enough to a certain extent. It's close. You could tell the DNA, they're all very similar and stuff like that, with the ghost and the disfigurement and the haunting eye and stuff, and the popping out of the water. All that's in there too, and the old kind of masseuse is in there as well. So great stuff. Check it out if you like ghost stories. If you like that story in particular, this is probably one of the most atmospheric and classy versions of it I've ever seen. All right, the next one here is Hong Kong 1941 by Eureka Films, made in 1984. Starring Chow Yun-fat, of all people, and by the director of the guy who did He Lives by Night, the 1982 kind of horror thriller. He did other things as well. This is based on the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong during World War II. And I was familiar with the real-life story, because I had saw another version of this from 1994, which is more of an exploitation-style film, which feels more in line with Black Sun the Naked Massacre or Men Behind the Sun or something along those lines. Really exploitative, but also like drama, kind of typical Hong Kong, almost like Cat 3 kind of style stuff. Good film. I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but this is more of your classic film. Did well in theaters, did well critically kind of film. Chow Yun-fat before this was kind of like a TV actor, but he kind of gained recognition, of course, from this and other things like the John Woo movies later on, and became kind of a big star. But this film follows 3 kind of main characters here, 2 of which are childhood friends, one of which is more of a criminal element, degenerate kind of person, and one of which who's from a rich family, but she has kind of a terminal illness, and it's hard to marry off. They're trying to do all these marriages and things like that. And these 3 all come together. Chow Yun-fat's kind of a loner, becomes good friends with them, and helps the guy out of criminal activities and fighting against the Japanese and the Hong Kong police and and all those things. So before the Japanese, come into Hong Kong, it's kind of a free-for-all where the Hong Kong police become these kind of villains and start, trying to rape and kill all these people and steal and things like that. So it becomes complete chaos in this film beforehand. And there's these lines where they're saying, oh, only if the Japanese would get here sooner. And of course, that's not going to be the relief that they need. Everybody knows kind of what's happening here. And you have those images from the other film and with the baby on a bayonet and things like that. That doesn't actually happen in this film, but you do see like people beheaded or the idea of it and kids kind of mimicking it, which it happens in a lot of films. Chow Yun-fat's good in it. The whole lead cast of three are really good in it. It's what was the original title? Waiting for the Dawn, which Frank Jin talks about in the commentary and everything. He mentions, the how much it cost, how much it made, how it was critically looked at, and things like that, and the history of the actors. Good commentary. But Waiting for the Dawn fits a bit better of the title because we have the original bookend opening and the ending kind of doing that. It's a really sad, tragic tale, but it has a lot of action as well. Overall, Hong Kong 1941 is a solid movie from Eureka, and I was very curious about it because I saw the other version and I was like, well, how's this one land? I saw the 90s one, exploitation crazy one, and it's almost the same story. It kind of plays out with the people of the village turning against each other and stealing everything like that. But the other one is just dirtier and grittier and cheaper. This one feels more grounded. But I really enjoyed Hong Kong 1941. And I think most people would that are fans of Chow Yun-fat or action or just kind of historical stuff as well. But as far as the special features, we have new commentary by East Asian film expert Frank Jin, new appreciation of Hong Kong 1941 by film writer, programmer, and East Asian film expert Tony Raines. That's like 30 minutes. He talks about the history of this kind of the occupation and everything, and does other things along the lines. Crossing Cultures, an interview with Po Ching Long by Frederic Amberson. Po Chin was actually born in Britain, but was Chinese heritage and made movies in Hong Kong. And then we have the director on Hong Kong 1941 and Cultural Identity, Masterclass at Udine FEFF 2023. 2 archival interviews with Chow Yun-fat, 3 archival interviews with Celia Yip, archival interview with Paul Chun, theatrical trailer, plus a collector's booklet featuring new writings on Hong Kong 1941, and director by Gary Bedidson, editor of Asian Cinema Journal. So great release from Eureka Films. Cool movie. A nice little slice of a piece of history maybe we do want to forget. But hey, we can't. You know what I mean? It's great to like watch these kind of, so many World War II movies or this kind of story are all about American occupation of Europe, and there was like so many other crazy shit happening during World War II. World War II is probably like the overall one of the darkest, like craziest shit that happened. Unit 731, the Holocaust, Japanese internment camps, Japan doing all those fucked up things in Hong Kong too. It's just like lots of crazy shit going on in World War II, not to mention all the starvation in Russia with the soldiers and the fucking, it's nuts. It's like one of the craziest pieces of history. I can see why people become deeply obsessed with studying World War II. It's just a very crazy and interesting part of American and world history. Probably more so world history than the American aspect of things, because it went on way before we even got involved. But yeah, I'm there. I was not there. But yeah, you get it. Okay, this next one here is from Deaf Crocodile, and this is the Cathedral of New Emotions from 2006. This is a German animated film, and if you look at this to watch it, you'd be like, oh, this is way before, or way before 2006. So I put this in, and I was like, what in the fucking world is this insanity? So, from what I can gather, this is one of these deals where I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh, maybe the special features and stuff, and will give me context and everything. Listen to the special features. I was like, I'm still lost. And I look at reviews, and I'm like, a lot of people feel the same way. So this is kind of just more of like ideas and things like that. There is a plot to a certain extent. It appears that these group of like aliens that look kind of human or stuff like that, the way they communicate and change and do all weird things, when they go through a black hole, they turn into puddles of weirdness and they enjoy it. It's fucking nuts. But basically they have what I believe is a human on their ship, and they're studying him and learning from him and experimenting on him. And there's some sort of old kind of guy that old like foggy, like ape kind of thing that has all these weird pieces of hair that happens, and they end up kind of, I think they go to Earth, and they take off their suits, and weird shit starts to happen to them, and they all start to turn against each other and start to melt and go nuts. And then by the very end of the thing, they kind of just turn into this giant ball of energy and dance around and turn to live action. Overall, the Cathedral of New Emotions is something that I feel like people, like really high or tripping would enjoy more, because I think more you can gather some of the stuff and make connections that maybe you normally couldn't make. You know what I'm saying? Like that, when you kind of need to open up your synapses and just kind of experience experience and take it all in. Me personally, I didn't love the movie. I loved some of the animation. I thought what they did was kind of cool, and there's some really wicked, crazy ideas. But overall, it left me kind of just lost. It lost me into kind of a, I didn't know what the hell was going on. Doesn't necessarily mean it was bad or a horrible experience. I thought some of the visualizations were really cool, but it is kind of gross at the same time, where you're just like, oh man, this is like kind of disturbing. Last week, watching the Plumpkin movie, which I absolutely adored. I Married a Strange Person. I love animation sometimes. This one, I kind of lost me. I do think it has some interesting stuff going on. There's a short on here from the director, Container Interstellar, 7 minutes. Working interview, film critic, Helmut Herps. That's 25 minutes, and then we have new commentary by film historian Ralph Geeson, new video essay by experimental filmmaker and film scholar Stephen Brumer. And now it's Stephen Brumer. I was like, oh, this will kind of open my eyes, and then by the end of it, I was just as confused as when I watched the movie. But that's a wild movie, The Cathedral of New Emotions. Okay, this next one here is a super bizarre film. This is from MVD Rewind, and this is Terminus, starring John Halliday, Jürgen Prochnow, and Karen Allen. I adore Karen Allen. I like Jürgen Prochnow. And Halliday is one of these guys who's in a slew of movies, and I recognize him, and like Diabolique and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, he does not like immediately come to mind, to be honest. So this is a weird one. A lot of the sci-fi kind of bizarre films, they call this like, what, a Mad Max kind of ripoff, Blade Runner kind of style thing, and I don't really know. This is a weird film. There's two versions of there. There's a longer French version on there, and then there's a shorter English version. This movie was actually shot in English and French, which is wild. So Jürgen Prochnow talks about that. In the special features, because they basically he had to shoot this in English and French, and he plays 3 roles in here. So the guy was doing pretty much everything. So this plot, I don't even know how to go about it. So it appears that some sort of child made this simulation where they're sending this other kind of child and this young woman or something along this. Karen Allen is like traveling across country in this kind of desert wasteland, and it's a simulation where she has to make it to a certain point, and she ends up picking up this child. Well, it's not. It's a little bit more complicated than that. She runs into this kind of, I guess you'd call like a maybe outlaw kind of guy in Halliday. And they pair up for a bit when they're in prison, but something tragic happens, and he has to move along on his own, and he ends up picking up this child. And we're cutting back to like Jürgen Prochnow and another child who designed this like weird simulation ship thing, and they're somehow interconnected. I'm gonna be brutally honest with you. I had no fucking idea what was going on, and I guess I get the gist of it to a certain extent. But while I was like looking back on it, I was like, I don't really think that it makes much sense. I think it's very, very inept. And I think it's very sloppy. I think that some of the set pieces are great. I think that, some of the characters are okay. Karen Allen is very underutilized, very wasted here. I think that Jürgen shines in it with the 3 roles. He does pretty decent in here. This is one of these movies that's on paper or that is like on the cusp of being really cool, but it becomes across really inept. It's kind of like an Albert Pune movie, but in maybe his latter day or when he just completely ran out of money, so it never makes any sense. I think that there's problems with the script or maybe the translation issues not coming from English to French, or maybe I completely missed something. There is one scene in this movie where we kind of find out what's in in one of the ships, and it is haunting stuff that's like kind of is the next level weirdness, and you're like, more of this, more of that. Like there's a scene where we kind of see inside this like club, and there's all these weird bizarre characters, and you're like, this is also really cool. Overall though, it just falls flat. I mean, it has really cool imagery, some decent kind of looking performances somewhat, but it's really shaky and really bizarre and just never really fits anywhere. It doesn't make much sense. There's a lot of weird sci-fi movies from the late 80s, action sci-fi kind of style things that just don't really land for me. They're just a little too disjointed to make much sense, and I think Terminus is one of them, unfortunately. Very cool visuals, and I think that there's a good movie in here somewhere. I just maybe couldn't comprehend it. But here we go here. Extended director's cut of Terminus, hour and 55 minutes. Presented in HD in French and English subtitles. New U.S. version of Terminus, 83 minutes in English with optional subtitles. New interview with the star, Jürgen Prochnow. New We All Descend, the making of Terminus includes interviews with Vincent Glenn, son of the writer-director Pierre William Glenn. Star Julie Glenn, daughter of the director. And archival interviews with Pierre William Glenn. 49 minutes, so that's very long. Photo gallery, reversible artwork, collectible mini poster, and original theatrical trailer. So, weird ass movie. Might be for some people. Didn't really connect with me. Okay, the next one here is from Mondo Macabre, and this is Bohachi Bushido, Code of the Forgotten Eight from 1973, and this is by Taro Ishii. Taro Ishii did all those really awesome torture films like Inferno of Torture, Orgy of Edo, Yakuza Law, just a slew of them, Love and Crime, and he also directed weird blind man's curse or blind woman's curse, and the weird horrors of malformed men. So Taro Ishii is one of the premier cult directors from Japan. So this one here is a weird and wild, awesome movie. I had never seen this one. I've heard about it in passing, but was kind of excited to see Mondo Macabre put it out finally. So I think it did have an initial, or the sequel might have had a Blu-ray. There's a sequel that I would have to check out. But right in the way, we have these beautiful credits and kind of the background, kind of like weird kind of silhouetted fighting and sword and blood spraying and everything like that. It kind of reminds me of some of the Shaw Brothers openings where we have the credits, where we have these people fighting and kind of introductions. But we're introduced to kind of the lead here, who is this like badass assassin. He's an actor in a slew of tons of Japanese films, but he's this badass assassin in, of course, the period times where we have the shogunate and stuff ruling everything. But he kind of just wanders, and anybody gets in his way, he kills. Anybody that bothers him, he kills. And we have this, we kind of see his badassery. He's on like this bridge, and we have this red background, and he's just chopping all these people to bits. I was like, oh wow, this starts off, catches your attention immediately. So as he's kind of traveling along his ways, he's kind of approached by this guy that says, listen, we want you to be part of this weird kind of organization, the Bohachi, I believe it's the organization, yeah. And he brings him in, and they tell him all these things, and you have to pass these tests. He ends up failing the test, and they send him back out into the real world and everything, where he would be protected in this Bohachi kind of organization. And, of course, the law guys, they're after him, this kind of, like, local, kind of, like, other village and stuff. They kind of send these people after him. They want to take him in and everything like that. I'm not sure if I'm getting all the details right, but there's also, a hierarchy, the chancellor and everything that controls everything. So they kind of want to keep the chancellor a peace of mind. They don't want him coming in and changing all these things. But right at the last minute, when he fights some of these guys off, the guy who runs Bohachi comes back, and he's this old, creepy guy with rotten teeth, and he says, listen, I want him in my group, and I'm protecting him. That causes obvious turmoil, so he brings him in here. And he's like, I wonder why this guy protected me. He decides he's going to use him as this assassin to go around and basically kill everybody who sleeps with certain women. I can't remember the details exactly. So anybody that mixes like their whatever. So like he finds it disgusting, and he thinks he can get the upper hand here, and he has this big scheme. So he uses him as this assassin to go to village and start basically killing all these guys who are sleeping with his women and humiliating them. And he has this. He ends up having this little kind of like sidekick with him who's like who's like all like just ghoulish. He's very Goonie-ish and whatnot. But it doesn't end there, of course. There's going to be some backstabbing, and he's followed by these 5 beautiful naked women who are part of the Bohachi group, and they're constantly like trying to torture women, and they're just, this whole organization is like this weird, like perverted group of people where they enjoy torture, and they're just basically non-humans. They say, we do not live as humans, we are not humans. So like it creates this movie filled with nudity and filled with violence and spraying, and there's lots of these set pieces where our our anti-hero has to fight tons and tons of guys and charging at him with all these wild weapons. It's also exploitative as fuck, because we have, syphilitic women held in a prison, and the people's punishment is being put in a prison with a syphilis, sex-crazed woman and shit like that. Some stuff straight out of like Blood-Sucking Freaks or something. But I thought this was great. I thought that the special effects were fun. I thought the fighting was great for the most part, in terms of like the style and the blades coming up. Overall, I thought Bohachi Bushido was really freaking cool. It looks gorgeous too. This is from a 4K scan. They did have a 4K that was limited. As far as the special features are concerned, we have interview with the director Shinya Tsukamoto, who directed all the amazing fucking movies like Tetsuo the Iron Man, and what's the one, Haruko the Goblin, just great stuff. And he basically has an interview about working with Bohachi director Taro Ishii on other things. He was on the Killer Dwarf, the blind woman Killer Dwarf movie that what was the Synapse kind of small little label put out years back. What am I looking at here? It was Panic House. There it is. Blind Beast versus Killer Dwarf. He was in that one. So he talks about working with him and working with the actor as well, who's in this, who also was in that. And then we have Yuriko Hishimi, archive interview, What is Pinky Violence? Archive interview with actress Yuriko Hishimi. She talks about her career starting out in Toho and moving into like being more freelance and retiring, and ended up popping up in some Ishii movies. And What is Pinky Violence? Audio commentary with Japanese film expert Tom Mez. That's pretty good. He pretty quick on his feet, knows a lot about these movies, enjoys this movie as well. And an archival audio commentary, which is in Japanese, by J. Taro Shigaro and Nakano. I can't read, that's very small. But as well as we also have What is Pinky Violence? Got a little interview with an expert who talks about what he considers to be pinky violence and talks about who they were made for and all that kind of stuff. So great release from the Macabre, Bohachi, Bushido. I'd like to see the sequel. I believe there is a sequel out there somewhere. But yeah, Mondo Macabre always putting out, doing the demented Lord's work on film preservation. Great stuff. Okay, let's get into those 1982 movies. First one is Black Hair, Velvet Soul. And I do want to mention this actress here. It is Azumi Ashima. And she's in a bunch of these kind of Nakatsu erotic film kind of style stuff. And she stars in this one as well. She's in, the Blue Door or something along those lines from this year as well. And she's great in this one. This is one of my favorite Nakatsu movies of 1982. And I almost didn't watch it. I didn't know it was kind of in the thriller kind of, vein deal. But what we have here is this woman who runs her father's, restaurant. And that's all she has left of her father. She has a sister who is a martial artist. She's also an amazing dancer. And her husband is a low-life piece of shit gambler who has a bunch of debts to these horrible criminals. So these criminals, basically what they do is they grab people who owe them debts or the wives of people, and they force them into this sexual acts where one of the main bad guys is kind of like this sadist where he tortures the women and everything like that. So that's kind of where we're at here. And we know where it's going. We have this fallout with her husband, of course, who's also cheating on her. But she's basically on the line here to be kind of exploited by these sleazy pieces of shit. But she has somebody who finds interest in her and falls in love. So we have this love story on the side and everything like that. So we're kind of counting down to how awful these people are going to be with, of course, sex scenes sprinkled into the movie because it isn't a Katsu erotic film style thing. So we have to have your X amount of sex in here. I love the idea. So the sister's a martial artist, and she says, look, it's so cool that we're both completely, we're artists in our own kind of fields. You're this dancer, and I'm a martial artist. This movie actually made me mad at a couple points because the bad guys pissed me off. And I'm at that point in my life, like, where I'm being held over a barrel like this. I'm just gonna get a gun and shoot you all in the face or shoot myself. Like, I'm not playing this game in this movie. Like, it's so aggravating to, like, when they have you, but they have you by the balls. You can't do anything about it. It drove me nuts, and I so wanted the catharsis in the film, the revenge, right? And that's sometimes those Nakatsu movies, they don't give you any of that. They put titillation on some of the nastiest acts in the movie. It can be really bothersome, but at the same time, the end of this one was like, oh wow, that really kind of makes it all worth it in a weird way. And I don't mean like there's a catharsis, there's not, but there's this kind of deeply in look, like the character kind of has this self-exposition of herself at the very end, and I was like, that's a little bit different than a lot of these movies. Incredibly tragic, incredibly sad, but poignant. And I was actually impressed with the ending of this movie, and it became one of the better of the Nakatsu erotic films this year. But yeah, it is sleazy, it is trashy, so it's in that kind of vein. Also a really good performance by our lead here. Black Hair, Velvet Soul. Good one. Okay, the next one here. I'm not sure if this is in Nakatsu. This is called Demon's Room. The other one was called Blue Woman, I was thinking of earlier. But this is Demon's Room. I don't think it's in Nakatsu, but it's in the same kind of vein. It very well may be. And this one I used AI subtitles. And at first they started off real smooth, and they got super sloppy. And I was like, oh boy. So this one basically follows the story of this guy who tricks this woman. She's a woman of kind of a guy with some money, and tricks her into showing up to this place and decides to hold her hostage and rape her repeatedly. Most of this movie is him just raping her in bed. And eventually they start to form some sort of shaky relationship where she seems to care for him, and maybe the husband's not going to pay the ransom. Maybe it's all part of a trick and these people are all involved with each other. I'm not necessarily sure what the hell was going on or what happened because of subtitles, but at the same time this movie became awfully repetitive. I mean, it's not horribly shot, I guess. It's very typical, but it's not anything particularly memorable either, especially when you have some of the other more memorable Nakatsu erotic films this year. Even some of the ones that aren't great are still more memorable, like Nurse Diary, Beast Afternoon, or Beast Diary, or whatever the fuck that one is. Not great movie, but certainly a more memorable one. And actually watching Black Hair, Velvet Soul, you're like, oh wow, so this is just kind of what you can do with the medium here, and it's just much better. This one, I know a lot of people do kind of seem to enjoy it, and I think that the ending is really kind of fucked up and impactful. But besides that, I felt that this one was tedious and became very much like a lot of the other ones that aren't bad. I like the other ones more though. This probably ranks probably low for my kind of erotic erotic Nikatsu kind of style films from 1982. This is probably my least favorite. Maybe not technically the worst or anything like that, but most certainly the most repetitive and boring for me. This is Demon's Room. Okay, this one from 1982 is a pretty famous one. This is a cult film, not really horror, but it's kind of, I wanted to talk about it again, revisit it. This is from Sogo Ishii, who directed Angel Dust from 1994, which is a crazy-ass movie, and of course, Crazy Sound of Road from 1980. This is Burst City from Arrow Video here. So Burst City is a pretty much a huge cult movie, right? So Sogo Ishii was a Japanese director. He started with a student film in Crazy Sound of Road that got picked up for distro, and it became like this big kind of cult film. And listen to the commentary, which is an excellent commentary. Let me see who did this one. Who did the commentary on here? Tom Mez, of course it's Tom Mez. He does all of them, but he's pretty good at it. So he talks a lot about how this one, this director, Oishi, was kind of like on that front line for moving from the studio world into like the independent world, which I talk about later, you know, that V-Cinema and all those kind of crazy, weird-ass movies. V-Cinema's not independent, but you guys know what I'm saying, like that kind of cheaper films in the video stores and people making their own independent thing and doing different things. So it's like this guy, this director here was kind of one of the first to do that. I remember Crazy Thunder Road being memorable and weird. This one is just completely chaotic. It's shot chaotic, it's shot wild, it's shot weird. It feels like some weird post-apocalyptic world where we have this like kind of punk rock singer, crazy biker kind of deal, actually played by real life bands in here for the most part. And we also have these kind of weird workers. We have Yakuza, and then at the very end they all kind of come together for the biggest riot in the world, which is what makes the movie, because it's pure chaos, it's pure insanity, which is what really makes this, like, it's I don't know how you say, combat filming. I remember at the end of Dawn of the Dead they said that Gornick and stuff, that was like the closest thing to combat photography in a movie that they had experienced at that time, and I would say this fucking thing has to be like combat photography. There's a lot of explosions and people flying over the place and all these different kind of wild characters that come together at the very end. I like the movie. I think it's got this crazy raw energy about it, but I do think it's, again, a little inept and crazy and weird and just almost a little too weird for its own good and hard to grasp onto, but it keeps that energy throughout the entire movie. So by the end of it, it just feels like this big explosion and everything like that, and it works for that. As far as Burst City is concerned, in the features, we have brand new audio commentary by Japanese film expert Tom Mez, The Punk Spirit 82, Shogo Ishii on Burst City, exclusive new 56 interview with the director, bursting out an exclusive 27-minute interview with the academic and independent filmmaker Yoshiharu Tezuka on Jisoo Iga and making of Burst City. So we go in newly featured sleeve featuring original newly commissioned artwork by Chris Malbin. So they do mention on the commentary, which I found most interesting, Tom Mez goes through he's talking about a booklet that was in a box set that was released in Japan about the director's work. And he talks about 22 movies that he named that were influential to him. And you're like, oh, you hear them and you're like, yeah, that's exactly right. A couple Kinji Fukasaku movies like Street Mob, but then it's like stuff like Taxi Driver and Midnight, Cowboy, but then he gets into the weird kind of stuff as well. You're like, yeah, I do see these kind of inspirations, the Wild Bunch in there, so it's really cool. It's kind of this weird mixture of smorgasbords of crazy kind of things. He even gets into the idea of like Bruce Springsteen being very influential into the kind of music and everything like that. And I do want to mention like the drag racing. I know they said it's more of a Bruce Springsteen influence, but I guess Bruce Springsteen could be kind of influential back into looking at the 50s kind of Americana, or maybe like a look at it too. So like this is in a way almost another of those things that's like, hey, the 80s is kind of repeating the 50s. We have the biker kind of like leather coats and the drag racing and things like that. So Burst City, not horror but cult, and most certainly worth watching if you're going to talk about 1982 movies. And this one had a huge influence on the cyber kind of punk genre as well and whatnot. And I guarantee the director Shinya Tsukamoto, who I mentioned earlier, doing an interview on a disc, definitely saw this film or took inspiration from it when he went on to make Tetsuo the Iron Man and things like that. Okay, the short film block here, and I know I cheat. I have to read which the titles are because most of them are a minute or 2 minutes, and I can't remember every single little detail about every one of these. So short film block 1982, 7 movies here. We have Specimens. This is a Roy Spence kind of short, little cute sci-fi animated thing here. Enjoyable. Basically this old giant robot was buried deep within the grounds and some kids kind of break him out on accident and he kind of runs amok, and we turn out it's actually a kid in the classroom reading an American sci-fi novel. That's why all the American are dubbed over so poorly in the short and everything like that. But fun, cute, a lot of good special effects, miniatures caricatures and things like that. Give it some love. Dance Macabre, which is a fun animated one about this little ghost kind of doing a little dance in the cemetery with some other ghost friends and witches, and it raises Satan himself, who decides to start eating everything in sight. Love this one. Very cute, very short. And then we have The Terror of the Goonie Monster, literally 2 minutes silent movie about some kids seeing basically recreating that Bigfoot video footage and somebody dying. I mean, it is what it is. Not very interesting. Dance of the Dead Children. This is Lydia Lunch music video kind of deal, and it's her kind of dancing around or some shit with some like baby dolls. I don't fucking know. It's not long enough to ever get invested. Johnny YesNo. This is kind of a weird film noir. Everywhere you read, it says Lynchian, 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 and I can see that to a certain extent. But you know the thing about Lynchian movies, or Lynch movies like Blue Velvet and things like that, Wild at Heart, they come together at the end and they really work. But then a lot of that is the decent runtime and things like that. And I do see that it just does have some Lynchian kind of qualities. The music's really great. The cinematography's pretty cool. Overall, it's a weird kind of bastard, crazy neo-noir thing, and it's very Lynchian. Do I love it? No. Do I like it? It's fine. It's fine. And I think that the filmmaker, I would like to see something go on, maybe a feature length or something. I'm sure they probably did it. And then we have Leather Poltergeist. I don't know what the fuck this thing is, basically. It's like, hey, what if we got like a weird kind of poltergeist was coming into the world that was right out of cruising and wanted to rape and kill or some shit like that. It's bland. It's homoerotic. It's not bland. I don't want to mean that. I mean, it's not bland at all. That's the polar opposite. But it's homoerotic and weird and doesn't do very much. It's just kind of boring. It's more so kind of just a weird homoerotic leather thing. I don't know. It's not for me. It's not horrible, but it's not for me. The Big Green House on the Corner. This is fun. This is very short. This is a couple kids making a Leatherface-inspired short in their house, where we have, a kid kind of going up there and Leatherface kind of kids acting like Leatherface and cutting them up. I enjoyed it. It's fun. It's cute. It's again short enough that you won't bother. All these are on YouTube for the most part. But yeah, the big house on the big green house on the corner. I enjoyed that one. So yeah, better than the Goonie Monster. So you kids need to look at the big house one and get better. It's a gore film. So yeah, it's enjoyable. Okay, the Patreon pick this time around is The Flesh and the Fiends, based on the Burke and Hare story, which is a great story for history and films and all that kind of stuff. Love the story. This is directed by John Gilling, who did a bunch of the Hammer movies. He did The Mummy's Shroud, and what else did he do? The Reptile, Plague of the Zombies. So he's a Hammer director. And this was actually directed and made in 1960. So this has Peter Cushing in it and Donald Pleasance. And Billy Whitelaw, who I love too. She's in, of course, Twisted Nerve and everything like that. So, and Hot Fuzz. So here we go. So this was made right in the weird and kind of the Frankenstein Hammer cycle. But after, 1 and 2, Curse and Revenge, there's a fantastic commentary on here by Tim Lucas, goes into detail about this. He actually has a connection with this movie, says it's the first movie that ever made him sick. So that's crazy. And it's just the darkness of it. And I do see that. So there's been some Burke and Hare stories. Doctor and the Devil comes to mind, directed by Freddie Francis, another Hammer alumni from 85, which I really enjoy. Then there was the Burke and Hare story by John Landis with Simon Pegg and Andy Serkis, Tim Curry, very silly, fun movie, comedy version. But I have to say that I think this is my favorite Burke and Hare story. I think Redemption Films also put out one from the 70s. But so Dr. Knox is played by Peter Cushing, and he, of course, the story of Burke and Hare is these couple kind of criminal kind of guys realize that the medical world is paying for cadavers because they want them to kind of further science. So Peter Cushing as Dr. Knox is a very much his Dr. Frankenstein style character. Donald Pleasance plays Hare in here, and this is one of Donald Pleasance's best performances I've ever seen him play. It is a creepy, sardonic, weird performance where he's like, oh yes, Burke, and he's just, I don't know, you guys see Donald Pleasance, and sometimes he does a little over the top acting. Sometimes I love him. He's one of my all-time favorites, top 10 probably favorite actors of all time. But in this one, he has this element of just being really cold, and he has those eyes, and he just says the weird things, and a lot of times he'll say it very monotone and calm. But basically what happens is once these two guys find out that they can get money for corpses, one of their wives runs this, or a common law wife runs this kind of not halfway house, but kind of boarding house and everything like that. So they start killing people in the boarding house, bringing people back, finding old drunks in the street and bringing them in. And Billy Whitelaw is this kind of a woman who goes out and drinks, and she starts this relationship with this young kind of medical intern that works for Peter Cushing, and is in this class and everything like that. So they have this connection. But of course, that's kind of get complicated when people start to end up on that slab for Dr. Mickey Knox. Jeez, Mickey and Mallory Knox did it for Dr. Knox. That they recognize. Peter Cushing is a really great performance here. He has such a biting tongue. His wit is super sharp in here when he banters or argues with all the other surgeons and makes fun of them. It's very much like the latter Frankenstein movies and the Hammer ones. I can't remember the one where he's in disguise. Is it Frankenstein Created Woman where he's walks in that room and he starts making fun of all the other doctors and shit? It might be Revenge, but it's that one too. But he's fucking brilliant. In this one, he flexes that muscle so hard. He's so great in it, and he just tears him the limb from fucking limb. And this is a weird kind of movie where it kind of walks the line. I feel like they probably would have got in trouble if Dr. Knox walked away scot-free without having some sort of come-to-God moment. But the way they handle it at the very end was just like this perfect kind of mixture of like, I don't know how to explain it, but it felt perfect. And it was actually genuinely one of the best kind of big monologues that Peter Cushing ever gave. And I was like, this is lovely. This is wonderful. I love this movie. I absolutely adored Flesh and the Fiends. I love the classic, time period from that kind of stuff. I love the horror movies from that time. I'm a big, Frankenstein monster kind of style stuff, time period, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Burke and Hare stuff. I eat the Picture of Dorian Gray. I love those kind of stories. And some of them are based on true stories, of course, Burke and Hare. But this is just a story that's always interested me. And it has two of my all-time favorite actors giving two of my all-time favorite performances they ever gave. Billy Whitelaw is also perfect in this. She's playing this kind of, I guess you'd say loose woman, those kind of terms like that. A character that Tim Lucas mentions is not a character they often portrayed at this time, and somebody that can't control their sexual desires, can't control their urges and things like that. It's just way before its time. This is the longer version, which has nudity, and I was like, 1960 nudity, and of course that was cut out for the other versions and everything like that. But great commentary, great movie, highly recommended. A lot of good dialogue, a lot of good characters and everything like that. A lot of people juggling with the conscience of that classic tale of I'm a scientist and I need to push mankind forward by destroying a couple men here and there. Why not? But that's the whole argument there. As far as the special features are concerned, audio commentary by historian Tim Lucas includes alternate cut The Fiendish Ghouls, aka Mania, which is the cut version. 95 minutes of gruesome gothic bliss. The flesh and the fiends. Good stuff. And also I recommend checking out Doctor and the Devils if you want to see, who plays that. Stephen Ray, I think, plays Burke Hare on that. And Patrick Stewart's in that movie. That's a really good film, too. But, yeah, love this one. All right, let's get into all these questions, comments, concerns, and all that jazz. Angela150, thank you for the dark half. Love that one. You know what? I really enjoyed it this time, too. I always liked it, but I was just impressed with a lot of the stuff that I wasn't really that impressed with as a kid. I didn't know any better, and the 4K looks gorgeous. Audio Love, 1976. Royal Dano was in a ton of old westerns in which he always played the tragic characters. Very fine character. I love him. I love him. He's always pops up, and I always enjoy seeing him. He always plays a drunk. And every non-Western, he probably plays a drunk in half the Westerns, too. And I know in Drum he's a drunk. Way Up Dude gives me a thumbs up. Thank you. Nick Will from Belgium. Once again, you were right, sir. I just adored Let's Scare Jessica to Death. So well acted, very unsettling, and overlooked classic for sure. In turn, I would recommend Lindsay Anderson's If. It's a tough watch, but more than worth it. Pun intended. If you enjoyed Britannia Hospital, you'll likely enjoy If. I still need to check out Oh Lucky Man to complete this loose trilogy. Questions. Lindy Anderson's work has always felt so very British, pure UK, one might say. Is there an American director whose work you consider to be pure American or represents the US correctly? Let me see. At certain products of their time, I think are very U.S. director. I think a lot of the horror movies. I think Night of the Living Dead. I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I think those two are very regional from their time, from their place, and I do think they're very American too. Somebody said that WNUF Halloween special. My friend Duncan McLeish was his summer series. He said I don't think a lot of other British people get that very much. So I'm going to put that out there as a very American thing because the way it does the TV station and the commercials and the political stuff, it's very American. I don't think a lot of other cultures or countries would get that as much. But what's your favorite Malcolm McDowell performance? Clockwork Orange, Evil Nico, Halloween. For me, Sacrilege, I know. Favorite Malcolm McDowell performance? He's in so many cool ones. He's pretty great in Clockwork Orange. Kind of hard to shit on that one, right? I think that he's tremendous in that one. I mean, he's great in Caligula too, but I'm gonna have to go Clockwork Orange. I just can't not, right? Would you ever do a best of 2000 series, or do you feel that this this is the worst era for horror movies. There's always great horror movies from every year. And I'm sure there's tons of hidden gems that I haven't seen. My problem with doing the 2000s, when we start getting later 2000s, is just that there is too many movies. It's like so many direct-to-video movies that are unwatchable, and I just don't want to dig through all that shit. And, I don't want to force myself to do something that I'm not going to be full-heartedly in. Therefore, it will suffer, and I'll suffer, and everyone will suffer for it. But no, I'll probably just do from 1999 before, and then maybe I'll cherry pick some of my favorites or do something. I don't know. We'll see. I don't think I'll live that long to get there. Thanks for your continued service to the entertainment industry. If Toledo had a Walk of Fame, you'd have earned your star, sir. Till next week, God willing. Maybe not. I doubt it. Nobody in Toledo knows who I am, though. No one outside Toledo knows who I am. Let's be honest. ABBA 696. Hopefully, Eureka will release the rest of the Wallace Krimi. There's a German Blu-ray box set called Edgar Wallace Gestum as an edition that should be complete with a total of 34 movies with English audio and subtitles as well, but could be wrong. That'd be awesome if they released Volume 2. Travis Linscomb, love the freeze frame at the end. Great show, man. It was actually an accident. I forgot to put my ending on there. Ken Coakley, I just revisited A Dark Half. I was never a big fan of Timothy Hutton's body of work. He starred in Ordinary People in 1980, which won an Oscar for Best Picture, beating Raging Bull, and I didn't like Falcon of the Snowman or Turk 182. I did meet him at a Celtics game. I thought he was rooting for the Knicks, who were the opposing team that day. But he was, and still is, a Boston sports fan. His father was Tim Hutton, who appeared in The Green Berets and Hellfighters with John Wayne, as well as starred in Psychic Killer before his death at the age of 43 and 79. I think he's also in Major Dundee, the Peckinpah movie. Amy Madigan, who played Thad's wife, is married to Ed Harris, who, as we know, starred in Knight Riders and Creepshow, as well as played Alan Pegborn in Needful Things. Michael Rooker pulled off the protagonist role very well. I recently saw him in an episode of The Rookie. He played a guy in prison. Big Michael Rooker fan, one of my all-time favorites. Julie Harris, who played Reggie, starred with James Dean in East of Eden as well as The Haunting. I remember her line about not knowing much about sparrows when he said, "No one knows about this stuff except the Almighty, and I think he's in sabbatical." It's similar to the John Leguizamo line in Land of the Dead. I guess God left his phone off the hook. Yeah, Romero was very happy to have Julie Harris in there. He was very excited in the commentary. When the Homer character was singing in his truck before he pulled over for Stark, it was an old dirty limerick that I first heard when I was 9 years old. The whole limerick is, "There once was a hermit named Dave who kept a dead in his cave. He said, I do admit I'm a bit of a shit, but think of the money I'll save." Speaking of Stark, the make-up on... Oh, wait, sorry. Yeah, limericks. My grandpa Parker, my dad's dad, was obsessed with limericks. He had a little book of limericks that he'd carry around that I still have, and he'd read them all the time. From what I'm told, I knew him, but I don't remember hearing the limericks from him personally. But all my dad's, like my relatives and stuff, would bring it up. Speaking of Stark, the makeup on Hutton made him look like Josh Brolin. The phrase "the sparrows are flying" is from the book. Stephen King always put weird phrases in all his stories. For instance, all throughout Pet Sematary, he puts "Ah is the great and terrible," and throughout Rose Matter, he puts "I'm real, Rosie, and Rosie real." He has one for all his stories. I'm surprised that King didn't write the screenplay. Romero usually wrote his own screenplays, except Creepshow. Back in 2005 at Rock and Shock, I stood in line for an hour to see George Romero. I was with my best friend, who happened to be a beautiful woman. The guy was in front of us with a script. It was about a giant snapping turtle that ate people. The guy with the script said that he was going to show it to Romero. I told him that he writes the films that he directs. There's a documentary about the unfinished film called Snapper. The documentary is on Screenbox. My friend got mad that I crushed his dreams. I'm sure he showed it to her to impress her. Anyways, back to The Dark Half. It wasn't as good as Martin Knight Riders' Dead trilogy, but it was suspenseful. The film was as good as the book. I hear it's actually a pretty good adaptation. Speaking of Snapper, I remember hearing about that, but there was one that I thought would be really funny too. If we did, just because the tagline, if we made mutated movie with tuna that killed people, and the tagline would be, "Now you're the chicken of the sea." So the tuna eat people, so the tagline, "Now you're the chicken of the sea." It's brilliant. If I don't say so myself. Just kidding. Let's get into this update. It's a pretty decent sized one. Alright, first up we have Sissy. And who put this one out? Shudder. I really like this one. Came out a couple years ago. That and Piggy I thought were really underrated horror movies of the time. Great stuff here, Sissy. I'd recommend it if you have not seen it. Cool stuff about influencer that's, it's just the way they handle is really smart, I thought. Final Cut, this is from Umbrella. Not seen this one. But I pick up a lot of the Umbrella stuff here. Is this Umbrella? Yeah. Julie was dying to get into movies. Or was she? Don't know much about this one, so 19. What's the year on this? It just looked cool. Hit my time frame. Looked fun. So, picked it up. Nothing funner than dying people on movies. But then we have Killing Tide here. This is, what company is this? VHS Shitfest. Gotta love the title on that. Don't know much about this, but looked like it would be up my alley. I decided to take a blind buy on this ridiculous movie called Killing Tide. Then we have a couple box sets here. I ended up getting the Blaxploitation Classics Volume 1 from Scream Factory 4K set here with Truck Turner, Sheba Baby, Coffy, Hell Up in Harlem, Black Caesar, and Across 110th Street. I got a good price on it. Couldn't pass it up. It's got Blu-rays and 4Ks in there. Cool stuff. And then I know I don't have Volume 5, but I couldn't pass it up on the sale. I got a good deal on it. So Shaw Brothers Classics Volume 6. I still need to pick up Volume 5 from Scout Factory as well. What do we got in here? Crazy Nuts of Kung Fu, The Black Tavern, The Young Avenger, Shadow Girl, Swordsman at Large, Finger of Doom, Na Chan, The Seven Devils, The Black Enforcer, Duel for Gold, Swordswomen 3, The 12 Gold Medallions. So yeah, love the Shaw Brothers, so why not pick up that set where I could get it for a good price. Back to the video. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.